Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. And as always, I hope you enjoy the journey ahead. Now, today's episode is sourced straight from the Balkans, and our star is Milorad Dodik, the openly pro-Russian president of Republika Srpska, which accounts for nearly half of Bosnia and Herzegovina's territory. Last week, Bosnia and Herzegovina's state court decided that Dodik's fondness for flouting international rules wasn't just edgy, it was criminal. The verdict was a 1-year prison sentence and a 6-year ban from holding public office. Dodik immediately dismissed the ruling as politically motivated, and Moscow is not sitting idly by. So without further ado, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik has refused to comply with a summons from the country's central prosecutor in an investigation into his alleged undermining of Bosnia's constitutional order. His defiance further deepens political tensions in the fragile post-war nations just a week after his conviction for defying the international envoy overseeing Bosnia's Dayton Agreement.
I call on Bosniaks in Republika Srpska to remain calm and stable. We are not those who want war and conflict. Our policy is to return to the Dayton Agreement, to the constitution as it is written, and no war.
Dodik, the president of Republika Srpska, the Serb-dominated entity within Bosnia, recently signed controversial laws barring Bosnia's state judiciary, prosecutor's service and central police from operating in Republika Srpska, an act condemned by political opponents as an attempt to dismantle Bosnia's institutions. The move has drawn sharp criticism from both domestic leaders and international bodies. The Bosnian Muslim member of the country's presidency, Denis Bećirović, called the legislation a coup and urged Bosnia's constitutional court to annul it. Despite growing pressure, Dodik, a longtime Kremlin ally, insists he is not a threat to Bosnia and has called for political dialogue without foreign involvement.
And now, as always, it's time to explore the issue in greater detail. So, let's begin. The Republika Srpska Assembly has recently adopted a series of laws blocking state-level police and judicial operations, in essence creating a parallel judicial system, and introducing a Russian-style foreign agents registry aimed at exerting pressure on civil society. We've seen it in Georgia too. And as if that was not enough, an informal note to foreign diplomats warned that unless all state-level institutions created since the 1995 Dayton Peace Agreement are scrapped, Republika Srpska might pull a full-scale exit. The Trump administration twice refused to sign off on a routine joint statement backing the International High Representative, effectively giving Dodik a, hopefully, unintended nod. And then there is Viktor Orban, Hungary's prime minister, who's seemingly taken a page out of Dodik's playbook, supporting these provocative moves and, in the process, fraying the already delicate fabric of EU unity. Bosnia's state institutions, painstakingly built over decades to secure a hard-won peace, are now being challenged by laws passed under urgent procedure. That means they bypassed public debate and a second reading. History, it seems, is determined to repeat itself. Back in October 2021, a similar law was passed to create a parallel medicinal agency, a law that was eventually suspended by the Constitutional Court and annulled. Yet here we are again, with Milorad Dodik using this trial as a testing ground to see if shifting transatlantic dynamics might give him a free pass for his separatist ambitions. Dodik's gamble is very risky. The response of the international community needs to be unequivocal. Implementing laws without proper constitutional vetting is a red line, after all. This issue is more than an administrative hiccup, but instead a challenge to the very idea of lawful governance, jeopardizing Bosnia's EU accession prospects, be it free trade, visa-free travel, or the stability that comes with genuine institutional integrity. Dodik's actions are a big act of defiance, a gamble that could unravel decades of painstaking work to secure peace in a region still healing from the wounds of conflict. This trial isn't merely about punishing one man's transgressions, but a referendum on the future of Bosnia and the broader European project. If Milorad Dodik manages to rally support by undermining state institutions, the domino effect could plunge the region back into chaos. And whenever there is unrest in Europe, there is usually no winners, apart, that is, from the one in Moscow. And now here to shed more light on the issue is Rigel Halili, lecturer at the Center for European Studies at the University of Warsaw. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Thank you very much for having me here. Morning.
So let's begin with the entire situation, just, starting from the beginning, as they say. Milorad Dodik, he's saying he does not try to separate the Republika Srpska from Bosnia and Herzegovina. But his latest moves may actually have an effect which is, well, at least could be viewed as an introduction to a secession. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's sort of... this is a very long story, but because Milorad Dodik has declared quite often that he wants a secession of Republika Srpska from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He has declared this very openly in various occasions, in various situations. So this is not the first one. I think his aim is to have the Republika Srpska secede from Bosnia and Herzegovina and to join this entity with Serbia. However, he is testing the possibilities and the ways that he can achieve that. And this situation that we are facing now, Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing, it's pretty much the next one in line. And I don't think this is going to be the last one.
So right now he has been convicted of basically failing to comply with the directives of the High Representative, Mr. Christian Schmidt. In response to that, because he still can actually appeal against that conviction, but he has already begun to enact legislation which effectively removes certain institutions, state-level institutions, from the part of the country that he controls, i.e. the entity known as Republika Srpska. Assuming that the conviction is upheld, what would happen if we were to have the president of the Republika Srpska convicted, removed from politics for a couple of years, and also facing a prison sentence? What would that mean for that particular entity and the country itself?
We have to keep in mind one thing. The Republika Srpska is not an entity that is completely unilateral, in the sense that coalition, there is one coalition, alliance of social democrats that rules the Republika Srpska. At the head of this coalition is Milorad Dodik, but there is also opposition. So there are discussions internally in Republika Srpska whether this is a good move or a bad move. Yes, Milorad Dodik is fighting for his political survival, so he used his powers and the parliament of Republika Srpska to introduce several laws that were completely unconstitutional, in the sense that the constitution, the parliament of Republika Srpska cannot decide whether the state institutions, judiciary especially, are entitled to interfere in Republika Srpska, in the entity of Republika Srpska. To put it in a different way, this would be the case of one county in Poland, or one voivodeship, declaring that they don't want the courts of the Polish state, which is unacceptable. And that is the case also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These laws will not be accepted by the office of the High Representative. Therefore, we will have a repetition of the situation that that Bosnia had already when Dodik was convicted. Now, if indeed the appeal goes against Dodik's plans, then therefore, according to the sentence, he will be out of the politics for 6 years and 1 year in prison. That is a Dodik's problem. The entity of Republika Srpska will have to choose another president, and that the procedures are there. This is not an unusual thing to do in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Republika Srpska, so that will not be a problem for Republika Srpska constitutionally speaking. But there would be definitely a political problem for the coalition that Dodik leads, and also for the political stability of Republika Srpska and of the whole Bosnia and Herzegovina, perhaps even larger. So there is a trigger. There will be definitely a trigger that will lead to major crisis, and I think this is something that we have to take into account when we, I mean, analysts and students and scholars who deal with Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Balkans, we have to take this into account, taking also in consideration what is happening in Europe at the moment and what is happening on the Euro-Atlantic level with the new moves that the Trump administration is making towards Russia and towards Europe. So the situation is very complicated on many levels.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned it, because this is not happening in isolation, and it's not happening at a random moment, right? Do you think that Mr. Dodik might have chosen this exact spot, this exact moment in space and time, so to say, to move ahead with his plans? Because he can count on certain friends, both in Europe and beyond. But also, it does seem like he was actually hoping for the Trump administration to at least exhibit acquiescence towards what he's doing, if not outright enthusiasm. He was actually quoted as saying that if Trump becomes president, there is a chance that Bosnia and Herzegovina would effectively fall apart. So what do you think of it? Who's going to benefit the most from this situation, and who's going to be likely to step up and help Mr. Dodik in basically making his plans reality?
That remains to be seen. Definitely, from what I see at the moment, the Trump administration is very interested in dealing with economic crisis and the internal debt and the costs of the foreign debt that the U.S. has. So these probably are the biggest problems, and they don't see that much what is happening in Bosnia or in Kosovo at the moment, or in the Balkans generally, or in Albania, in Serbia. So that remains to be seen. Probably the problems of Bosnia and the Balkans will be the next in line. So we will see what would happen. For the time being, I'm sure that when Ukrainian issue comes on the table during the negotiations between Russia and United States, the Balkans will come up as well. I'm sure about that, if not even also Caucasus. So, because these...
Do you think there is a risk that, because you're saying that it would come up in the course of these talks, do you think there is a risk that the Balkans could be sacrificed as a part of the so-called Russian sphere of influence? Because there is substantial influence in Serbia. Mr. Dodik himself is also not unenthusiastic towards Vladimir Putin, to put it mildly. Do you think there is a risk that the US might say, okay, we don't really have an interest in this part of the world. We are willing to engage in negotiations for the balance of power to be changed?
There are two factors that are here important. The first is the EU integration of Serbia and all the Western Balkans, and the EU has indeed tools to influence the political choices and political decisions made in the Balkans. So that is for sure. The second, the moment when Dodik says no to Bosnia and Herzegovina, he might face he is already facing internal opposition, in the sense that by doing so, he is blocking completely the EU integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And there is already opposition within Bosnia and Herzegovina that he is acting against the interest of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, who want to be part of European Union. So the role of European Union here is very important.
He suggested he might join the BRICS instead.
Well, but, as who? He is an entity, a small part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is indeed a small country in the world and in the Balkans. So that is not going to be the case. Let's not over accentuate the power and the possibilities of Milorad Dodik. He does not have that, really. The point is that he might use the situation that is in at the moment in Europe and in the Euro-Atlantic level to make a little big things for himself. But that is not going to be the case, I'm sure, because there are many other interests at stake. Of course, Russia is supporting the secession of Republika Srpska, but Russia has shown in the past, also towards the Serbs, that when its interests have been at stake, Russia had said no. So it might be the same. It might be the same. I'm seeing at this situation. I'm trying to see the situation in a larger sort of context, not only in the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't think we are going to have an additional war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, definitely, in my opinion at least. But there is going to be a political crisis, state crisis. This is the case now. And it remains to be seen what would be the pressure from EU. Just to mention the news from a few days ago, when the law you mentioned that Dodik is acting against the interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and by the way, they introduced a similar law to the Russian one on foreign agents, and that law was heavily criticized by European Commission specifically 2 days ago. So it means that European Commission is paying attention to what is happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and definitely the such laws that are against the interest of Bosnia and Herzegovina or against the constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, they will have to be stopped by the Office of the High Representative. Last but not least, the whole concept of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the way it works, is an American product. It's the Dayton Accord. So we will have to see how United States also react towards their own interests in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the Balkans. I don't think the United States will lose the will to be present in this area, because it's also strategically important for them. This is the vicinity of Near East and so on and so forth. So when President Trump says that, or declares that it's perhaps time to pull out American forces from Germany, so it doesn't mean that they're going to go out of Europe. They might go down in Bosnia or in Kosovo or in Albania, which are all part of NATO. I mean, Albania is part of NATO and North Macedonia. So we will see what happened here. I don't think we will have. We know a lot to make already conclusions at this point.
Rigas Halili was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight into the subject.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a lovely day.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you absolutely don't want to miss. Romanian authorities have detained 6 individuals accused of attempting to overthrow the state with alleged support from Russia. Among the suspects is 101-year-old former Army Major General Radu Teodoru, whose home was raided as part of the investigation.
Prosecutors revealed that the group operated with a military-style structure and had contacted foreign agents in both Romania and Russia. Their alleged plans included negotiating Romania's withdrawal from NATO, dissolving the current constitutional order, and establishing a new government with changes to the national flag, anthem, and the country's name. The investigation is unrelated to ongoing probes into far-right politician Călin Georgescu, who is under scrutiny for alleged Russian interference in Romania's recent presidential election. Moscow has denied any involvement and has yet to comment on the latest developments.
Ukraine's top opposition leaders Petro Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko have ruled out holding elections while the country remains at war with Russia, despite reports that US officials recently explored the possibility. Their statements come amid growing international discussions on Ukraine's political future, with some voices in Washington suggesting elections could be part of a broader peace process.
Ukrainian opposition leaders dismissed the idea of holding elections while Russia's full-scale invasion continues, following reports that US officials had approached them about the possibility. Poroshenko, a former president, acknowledged discussions with American counterparts, but insisted that security first and peace through strength remains the priority. The comments come after Politico reported that members of US President Donald Trump's circle held secret talks with Ukrainian opposition figures about holding early elections. Trump has criticized President Volodymyr Zelensky for delaying elections, while Russian President Vladimir Putin has questioned Zelensky's legitimacy due to the lack of recent elections. However, under Ukraine's constitution, Zelensky remains in power under martial law, which was imposed in response to Russia's 2022 invasion. Ukrainian lawmakers reaffirmed this legal stance last month.
Armenia is strengthening ties with the United States by promoting trade and investment opportunities in its mining and nuclear power sectors. As part of this shift away from Russia, the Armenian government backed a $150 million loan for a US-Canadian gold mining venture, earning praise from the US Embassy.
As Armenia shifts away from its traditional alliance with Russia, the country is actively attracting US diplomatic and economic attention, particularly in the mining and nuclear power sectors. The US Embassy in Yerevan praised the Armenian government's recent decision to back a $150 million loan for Lydian Canada Ventures, a US-Canadian firm to complete gold extraction and smelting facilities at the Amulsa mine. The project had been stalled since 2018 due to environmental protests, but is now moving forward. Armenia is also considering bids from US, Russian and South Korean firms to build a new nuclear reactor to replace the aging Metsamor power station, which supplies 40% of the country's electricity. Although Russia's Rosatom will refurbish Metsamor in 2026, the worsening relationship between Yerevan and Moscow increases the likelihood that a US company could win the nuclear contract. This shift aligns with the Trump administration's focus on securing deals in rare earth minerals and nuclear energy, as evidenced by recent diplomatic discussions with Ukraine and Uzbekistan.
And finally, we have arrived at the East-splaining portion of our show. This time around, we're talking about the name Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is more than just a geographical label. It reflects the country's rich history, cultural complexity and political divisions. But why are both Bosnia and Herzegovina included in the official name? Understanding the significance of both names could shed some light on the country's ongoing struggle for unity amid its diverse ethnic and regional identities.
Bosnia and Herzegovina, a country in the Balkans and major tourist attraction due to its beautiful landscape and culture, has a fairly complicated legal status and history. The name Bosnia dates to medieval times, referring to the larger northern region of today's country. Herzegovina, on the other hand, derives its name from the title Herceg Duke Stjepan Vukčić Kosača, a 15th century noble who ruled over the southern region. Under Ottoman rule and later the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the dual name was recognized, further cementing its identity. The current political framework of Bosnia and Herzegovina was established by the Dayton Peace Agreement in 1995, which ended the Bosnian War. The agreement divided the country into two highly autonomous entities. The Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, primarily home to Bosnian Muslims and Bosnian Croats, and Republika Srpska, the Serb-majority entity. Some political factions, especially among Croats and Serbs, advocate for further decentralization, with Croat leaders occasionally pushing for a third political entity representing Croat interests, often centered in Herzegovina.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Bye for now.